Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. I'm Danielle, the creator of Natural Beauty Rose, and this is Ani, I don't even say lead trainer anymore. You're like
Director of Education.
Director of Education. You've like earned a new title. You're no longer lead trainer. You're like the director of my life. Thank you. Thank you for being
What
the
do you do? I direct Danielle's life. What do you do?
Literally, I'll text her. I'll be like, so I just want to confirm the meeting is tomorrow at noon, right? She's like, Danielle, yes. I'm like, okay.
I'm like, here's the schedule for the week. Here's the one for the month. Here's what we're doing, where we're going.
Well, it's like I have like 3 calendars, and it's like I have my mom calendar, my work calendar, and then we have like Trello and Slack and all these other things. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not crazy, and I put this in there for a reason. So, I just gotta.
We have to talk about, we have not been here for a few weeks.
Yes.
That's on me.
Well, Ani, if you didn't just go out and get COVID, we'd all be fine.
Yep,
but seriously, let's talk about that, because like you got your test results back. You're totally cleared. You're totally good. Otherwise, I would be like, have a little plexiglass up here.
I'd still be fully masked. Actually, I wouldn't even be here. We still would not be back. Yeah.
No.
I traveled. I went to see my family. Hadn't seen them in over 6 months. And on the way back, look, I can tell you exactly where I fucking got it. This hungry hippo on the plane really wanted food, and I took my damn mask off to eat.
But that's nuts.
Don't do it, kids.
I have taken my mask off to eat. Like, it's had to.
Someone must have come by and got their germs on me.
Some asshole was flying that had it, that was sick and wasn't supposed to be there, because.
For fucking sure. So
for sure.
It happens. It is what it is. I quarantined for 24 days.
The longest quarantine in the history of quarantining. Like, I felt so bad for you. I dropped off food. I was like, oh, hi, Ani, from the door. Like,
my favorite, when you're like, you haven't gone for a drive. I'm like, I haven't left my house.
I was like, go for a walk. Can you do that? I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do. What you're like,
you're not supposed to leave your house.
Well, funny story is I was like, Ani, do you want to go to the San Diego Zoo yesterday? And I thought, I'm like, it's going to be dead. Like, who goes to the zoo? It was so freaking busy and so hot.
I feel like it was not as busy as I would have expected on like a summer day.
Well, I kept looking at you, and you looked like you had anxiety. You were like, people.
I'm telling you, because at one point, so there were we had 2 kids with us, Danielle's kid and then Katie's daughter, and I was holding one of the daughters so she could see this tiny, huge baby hippo, though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on a hippo trend today.
Yeah.
It was my brethren, guys. I went to see him at the zoo. And then all of a sudden, I felt like a crowd of people, and I was like,
walls closing in.
I'm like, germs, people, COVID, I'm out. I was like, Sage, we're done. We gotta go.
I'm actually a little bit like that anyways, but before all this happened, like I don't like, that's why I don't like elevators and small spaces and lots of people. I'm like, get out of my bubble.
I literally, look, I still have the same bag as yesterday. I have my Germex, and then if I actually open it like a total lunatic, this is a bag of Lysol wipes if we need to wipe anything down.
Hey,
I have an extra mask.
You know what? I appreciate that, because I've actually always been a little bit of a germaphobe because of kids. Like, once you have kids, like they just always have shit on their face and hands, and you just always have to have like Lysol wipes and some kind of sanitation. Like, kids are just like, Mom, man, like dirty hands all over you.
And yesterday we were so sweaty, we ended up taking Isla's baby wipes and like
cleaning
God. Ourselves. We're like, I'm dripping sweat.
But you recovered, you feel good, like
yeah.
It was just like
they said I quote unquote had a mild case, which people keep asking me my symptoms. It was almost like having the flu. Okay. It was fever, chills, body aches. The craziest one was loss of sense of smell.
Yeah, that's weird.
I lost it for about a week and a half. And like I'm telling you, I would open up a jar of garlic, put basically my nose in it, nothing. That and peanut butter, I couldn't smell anything. It was the craziest thing in the world.
You probably weren't very hungry then. Like I feel like when you have a cold or when you can't smell,
I ate.
Like,
I ate.
Oh, good for you.
Don't get it twisted.
Good for you.
Hungry hippo girl.
Well,
I was eating.
You're back. You're alive. You're safe. You're healthy.
Hallelujah.
We're here. So let's talk about today's topic.
Well, you know what? And it's so crazy. So one of our trainers got her salon broken into.
Yeah.
Like, it was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. She literally went through and showed us a video. She has a camera system. If you don't have alarms, guys, I highly recommend you get it. Like, it's just necessary at this point. And he literally went up to her door, went pop with some crazy fucking thievery shit, and her front door just shattered. And you didn't see him run in because the video cut off. It only takes like a certain clip, but he stole the cash register. Luckily, there was only like $300, and she's like, he took a level 1 row tightening. She's like, fuck that guy, but at least that's all he took.
But it sucks that even happened.
Yeah, it makes you feel unsafe and scared.
Right.
So her front door is still kind of like plyboarded off, and I sit here thinking, and I'm like, man, like imagine if that. I'm an artist in DKW. Like, I'm commissioned. Like, not that I have no real responsibility in the salon, but I'm an artist. I go in, do some dope hair, and like, I'm out. You know what I mean? And
is mine done?
No, mine's, I dropped it. But It's so crazy because inside of that, I feel like people hear the word commission and they're like, ooh, you're getting ripped off. Like, they're not paying you as much as they should. They should pay you more. And it's like, but I also don't have any of the responsibility.
Right. I think as a business owner, you take on like 10 times more of the stress. And then you have for yourself, but then say you have like, 5, 10 stylists and you're taking on the stress for them too.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I mean, I've had my salon for like 4 years is all. And even then, like every year I'm like, whew, like there's been times where I look at my salon and I'm like, is it worth it? Like, and I feel like a lot of salon owners, you hear that story where it's like their dream is to open their own place. But if you don't do the numbers and if you don't know really where you're at, you actually end up working yourself like just to death. Like you end up working more and actually probably making the same and sometimes even less. And that's where a lot of business owners get like to this place where they're like, fuck it, close it down. Let's restart, or I'll just go back to doing my own thing. Or they're like, I want to go do commission somewhere. Sign me up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's what it is, especially people who've never been in a suite or they don't own a salon or things like that. They don't really realize how much pressure there is in it. And it doesn't matter if you're the salon owner or if you own a business or you're an entrepreneur and you have your own company. I think people hear that and they're like, it's so easy. They just make a ton of money. But it's like, hold on.
Right.
Even if you as an artist, if you fuck up and you do something wrong, the owner now pays for that.
Right.
Like you have insurance on every single one of us. How about there was a point where even DKW, one day I walked in, it was during not my personal quarantine, the country's quarantine.
Yes.
I feel like now weirdly I have to like emphasize which one.
Yes.
But I walk in, I go to my station to grab something, and all of a sudden I'm like, why is there a swimming pool by my station?
Yeah.
And I was like,
stupid ceiling.
I go, oh no. The whole ceiling had a massive crack in it and was just dripping water. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, it was fun.
And as a business owner, you have to take on that responsibility now. And that's why I think I find it so frustrating when I have tons of artists message me, even sometimes like on Instagram, they'll DM me and be like, what do you think I should do? And part of me is always like, okay, but are you even empathetic, sympathetic, or remotely understanding what's happening?
Yeah, you can only understand a certain level. Do you know what I mean? Like if you haven't experienced it. I remember like when I first started my brand and I was like, I felt like I was a good artist. I felt like I did great hair. And I just kind of had to have this, we always say come to Jesus moment with myself. And I was like, Danielle, like you might be the best artist. You might be really, really good. Like, but it doesn't matter. Like obviously there's other people in your industry that know something that you're not doing. So even if you don't agree with them, you don't like them, you have to give them the respect that like they're successful because of the work that they did and they put into their businesses and their careers. And so that's why I was like, okay, I gotta like, I might not be able to understand fully where they're at, but through like pushing myself in business, I can now empathize more, right? And you have to be able to like take a step back and like have a come to Jesus moment with yourself and say, okay, I can compare myself to this person, but I don't own a salon. I don't own an education company. I don't own this. I don't do this. So you can only be like somewhat empathetic.
Yeah. Well, and even there have been, so one of our girls actually messaged me and she was like, hey, I own a salon. We were commission, and then I just switched to booth rent, and she's like, and now I'm making it an NBR only salon, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm gonna pay for marketing, pay for the ads, pay for the funnels, pay for training, and y'all are booth rent? Hold up, no. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's a stupid move to make. And I'm like, that's literally dumb. Like you're building up someone else's business, and not that there's nothing in it for you, but you're providing the building, the receptionist, the marketing, the advertising, and where's the give and take? It's all give and them taking. And she's like, I don't even know, like, how do I even have the conversation to switch over? And I'm like, it's so hard. It's so hard. But also it needs to be very logical. I'm like, if you show up and you're like, who's commission? You're commission. And you start popping balloons like that they don't give a shit about that. Right. Everybody wants to know what's in it for me. Right. And that sounds shitty, but it's really not. No one's going to be like, you're going to make a ton of money and I'm going to be poor and broke and living under a bridge. That sounds like a great idea. I'll totally do that.
I would say the biggest mistake I did as a salon owner is like, you learn as you go, right? And so I started as a booth renter and I was like, whoa, I'm fucking me sideways. Like, that's not going to work. So then I had to change it. But when I changed it to commission, I had to draw it out for the artist and say, okay, here's what you'll make if you go commission, plus I'm going to cover all this. And they were like, great. And it was weird, even commission, because hair is so expensive expensive and like my overhead is so expensive, I still even at commission was like, well, fuck me sideways again because I'm still not making a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
So then I had to change my commission again. And it's like I actually like lost half my crew at that point, but I had to rebuild. And I could have like, you know, tuck tail and been like, oh, I'm done, I'm over it. But I was too invested and I was like, no, there's got to be a way to make this profitable. And it just took me trial and error to figure out what was going to work because I wasn't just like a regular salon. I was an extension only salon.
And just for anyone, if you're not an extension only salon, but if you're a hairstylist and you're wondering what that looks like, on average, we're buying $30,000 worth of hair a month.
Right.
A month. And let's even put into it the fact that we work in Laguna Beach. The salon is
makes
literally
nauseous.
Don't think about it, Danielle. Don't think about all the zeros. It's fine. But literally like $30,000 just in hair. We're in a salon in a double space that's right beside the ocean. I know how much our rent is there, guys. It's vomit inducing knowing how much we pay. I guess not rent because we own it, but like the mortgage for it.
Yeah. No, it was an investment. Like it was an investment. But like I said, I felt like I was too deep. And so it was like, I felt like I'm like, there's got to be a way to make this work, but I had to separate facts and feelings and kind of go through the numbers with our CFO and be like, okay, where do we need to make this work? And I feel like we're finally, I mean, with everything going on in California, it's a little bit nutsos right now, but I feel like we're like, not like, I'm not just going to like sit around and wait for 2020 to get over. Like we're still like doing stuff to try to make sure that everything's sustainable.
Yes.
But I just think it's just like a whole nother, it's just crazy being a business owner. Like you can't really understand. Like you, I think, understand because even though it's like not your business, you're like right there with me, and so you hear and know everything.
Well, and even for me, I came from a suite. So when people are like, "But a suite's different," and I'm like, "Well, I had to have 2 different kinds of licenses and my tax number, and turn in my quarterly taxes and my retail quarterly payments. I had to do all of that. So I had retail, I had hair, I was an NBR only business. So while I may not fully understand at the same time.
You were still an independent operator because you were a renter. Yeah.
I still did everything myself. So I absolutely do understand to an extent. And I know for business owners, it can be frustrating. Frustrating when you're like, why do they not understand? And that's why I feel it also has to come down to a really open and honest conversation, not where you're bringing out bank statements being like, look how poor I am or look how rich I am. Like, that's not what it is. But like, hey guys, in order for you to operate in this space, for you to work here, this is how much it costs me. Right. This is between hair and color. We use 3 different color lines at DKW. They're all amazing. Retail, we use Oribe, which is such a nice brand, but at minimum, I think it's like a $10,000 order just to start with.
But again, like I think when you break it down, and we break this down with students all the time, we call it general's tent, right? And you have to like know exactly what you're bringing in. And it was crazy because even though I'm a commissioned salon, when you look at just the tips alone that my artists were making, it was almost, I think, like a third of their income at one point.
Well, it's so crazy. You can make it doing NBR and like at DKW, we're only allowed to work 3 days a week, which sounds crazy. Like we're only allowed to work 3 days a week.
I don't want my artists burning out. I need good quality work.
For sure. Like that's the thing. I mean, come on. Anyone who's an artist, whether you're listening on live right now or you're listening on the podcast, you know, if you're on day number 5 and it's your 7 p.m. client, that is not your best work.
You know what's so crazy? I posted something this morning on my Instagram and it was like telling your story. And I was saying how like you went from working this many hours to like this many hours. And somebody commented and they were like, I've never met a hairdresser that worked a 12-hour day. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Most hairdressers, it's not uncommon to go in from 9 to 9.
I'm going to start with number 1. Who the fuck are you to speak for an entire industry?
There was no face on the, so I just deleted it.
Dick.
I know.
But that's one of my big things. Like, you aren't even in the industry, and every stylist I know has worked 12-hour days.
I was going to say, watching testimonials this last week, it was crazy because everybody has like, every artist, especially if you've been doing hair for a minute, like they have this burnout phase. And you're like, the very thing that you got into hair for was to create time and space and freedom for yourself or time and space and freedom for your family. And I even remember, and I've shared this story a ton, but like when I was like, needed to find, I almost switched careers, honestly. Like I was like, I'm not going to do hair anymore because like I didn't know if I was going to stay married. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I can't do hair. There's no money in hair. Like I was like, I was a hairdresser and I was like, hairdressers don't make money. Like whatever, I'm out. And I had to be like, okay, Danielle, what are you going to do? What skills do you have? I'm like, I don't have any. I didn't go. I went to one semester of college and I took ceramics and gymnastics and math 101.
Hold on.
Ceramics, gymnastics, and math 101. So
gymnastics.
I needed an elective.
What fucking school did you
maybe
go
it wasn't
to?
gymnastics. It was like aerobics. It wasn't gymnastics. It was aerobics.
So what'd you go to college for? Zumba. What'd you go for?
But in doing that, I realized I went to a semester and I was like, I don't even know what I want to do, and I don't want to get a college degree just to have a college degree. I would rather have an actual skill. And I was like, but I even believe the stigma of like, oh, but don't be a hairdresser. And especially in Utah, like every other girl's a hairdresser. Like
there's so many there.
There's so many there.
Yeah.
Like that's because they all want to get married young, have babies, and hair school short and easy.
Got
so I was like, I'm not going to be that girl. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be that girl.
I'm that girl.
I'm that girl. So I went and I did hair school and I really liked it. And then long story short, like when I needed to make money and I looked at hair as my only skill and I literally had to separate facts and feelings. I'm like, okay, well, what's going to make me the most money? Okay, well, extensions is going to make me the most money. And I wore them in my hair and it was an easy sell. And so I started to like push extensions like crazy. But the thing is, I still wanted to be a mom, right? I was like, I'm not going to pull these 12-hour days. Now, don't get me wrong. Like there's been times in my career where I've done it and I'm like, no more.
Yep.
But I just felt like having kids, I wanted the space, the freedom, the flexibility, and I wanted to make money. And so I started just pitching extensions and I started getting fly-ins and I started getting like building this little brand. And next thing you know, like I'm telling people what I make and they're like, excuse me, what? You do what? I'm
It's
like,
literally like blink, blink.
I'm like, I do hair. And they're like, oh, so how much are you working? I'm like, oh, I work 3 days a week. I worked long days. I'd say I worked at least 10-hour days, but I did 3 days a week because I wanted to spend the rest of the time with my babies. And I realized like, I was like a unicorn because not only was I making this kind of money, but I didn't live in LA. I didn't live in New York. I was charging more than celebrity artists were to work on celebrities. And I was like, holy shit, like if I could teach more artists to do what I'm doing, it would really have a big impact on our industry. And that's really where things started for me. And I don't know why I kind of got off topic on this. I was just thinking about all the testimonials that we had been receiving. And it was so cool to hear them all because it's the same story that I experienced. They're like, I was burning out behind the chair. I didn't know, like, the very thing that I was after, which was to spend more time and space and freedom with my family, I was fucking losing. And it's just, I'm like, and I think that's why I push so hard. And yes, like, MBR is a cool tool, but I think that the BMS portion of it is what's having a huge impact on our industry.
Well, and I think that's something people have to realize, and this is going to sound so harsh, and I will not be surprised if I get shit about this. Not everybody is meant to be a business owner.
No.
Sorry, it's not easy. It's extremely difficult. It takes a lot of, I feel, not only bravery, it takes a lot of grit, it takes a ton of fucking courage, and it takes some smarts and being okay with fucking it up, then getting it right, then messing it up again. Then you have to be emotionally strong and mentally strong because emotionally people are going to come and go. Clients are going to be pissed off. Mentally strong of like, okay, I have my clients here. I have to do this. The manager has to do this. And it's a big juggling act. And not everybody is going to be a good business owner. So, but there's no, if you choose to be commission or booth renter or whatever it is you're doing, that's not a failure.
I don't think I was cut out to be a business owner, to be honest with you. I was like, when I first opened my own salon, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. I literally was like, I don't have a fucking choice. Like, and when you're at sink or swim, like I was like, okay. And I didn't want to just like make enough money to get by. Like I wanted to be successful. Like, I don't know if I knew how to do the business, but I have a lot of hard work ethic. And I'll figure it out. Like, that's like my strong point is I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll fall on my face a lot and I will just continue to get stronger.
Yes, but I think that's also the mark of a good business owner. Someone who's there, I feel like they're not so egotistical to be like, I know everything. To be like, you know what? I don't actually know everything.
Right.
I might not know half of everything that I should know, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to grow and get help where it needs. Yeah. And I think that's the mark of someone who can be successful and will be successful if they're really willing to put in the work. Even like the other day you came to me and you're like, Ani, this is like a shift we're making in the business. Can you do this? And I was like, 100%? No. Do I actually fully know how to do it? Definitely not. Am I that egotistical to be like, yeah, I fucking know everything? Hell no. I'm like, but I'm good with technology and I'm willing to learn and I know where I can find the assets that I need in order to do that. So that to me was just such a big thing. And that's why when people come in and look, I'm going to put this asterisk on here. If you're this guy, beware. Not guy in general, but human being. Nothing irritates me more than when people come to class or they fill out applications and they're like, I've been doing hair for 20 years. I know everything. And I'm like, if you knew everything, you wouldn't be here.
Like if you're going to sign up for something, like reel it in, like let us help you.
I'm going to need you to check your ego at the door because ego doesn't fucking work with what we do. Because the minute you stand there and you're like, I've been doing hair for so long. I know everything. I'm such a genius. I'm so smart. Immediately, I'm like, clearly you might be a fucking idiot if you can't even admit that you don't know something.
Well, and I think there's this piece in people where they see what we're doing and they know they need help, but it's like, I need help, but I don't need help. I need help, but I don't need help. And it's like, do you need help or do you want help? Do you not want help? Like, we don't care. We're not here to judge, but you got to be honest with me. It's like,
and asking for help doesn't make you weak.
No.
It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you unable to produce or grow or move forward.
Right.
Asking for help and having the ability to ask for help, I feel, is a strength.
Yeah.
And that's something
it's hard.
It is hard. I've never been good at it.
You have to, you know what's so funny is people are not honest with themselves.
No,
like,
never.
I think back to, and I always bring up like my nutrition and my fitness because that's what I'm into right now. And I think about, because I'm always talking to my trainer and she's like, people are so funny. She's like, I give them a meal plan and then they do their own damn thing. But then they're not even honest about it. And she's like, I don't care if you had Fruit Loops. Just tell me you had Fruit Loops so I know how to course correct you along the way.
It's
like,
dude.
And so people will lie to the coach that they're paying to help them. And sometimes I swear to God, I'm going through this whole fitness thing so that I can better understand my students. I'm like, because I'm like I find myself doing stuff. I'm like, she's like, oh, did you guys go to the zoo? I'm like, yeah. She's like, how was your diet yesterday? I'm like,
totally great.
It's awesome.
Brought my meal, brought 3 coolers.
No, I was like, yeah, I got my chicken and my rice. I'm like, fuck it, I had a frozen margarita and a pretzel. She's like, Danielle, and she's like, that's why I love you, though. I'm like, I know. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to eat really good this week, but I had a frozen margarita because I'm like, it doesn't help anyone if you don't know the whole truth.
Well, you know what? My favorite thing is when students, they're like, I'm doing it. Your program doesn't work. I'm trying everything. And I'm like, okay, but have you like, what are you doing? I'm like, have you done this? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, have you done this? And they're like, no. I'm like, have you done this? And they're like, no. I'm like, so you're telling me you're not actually following the program and you're upset that the program's not working when
you're following your own program.
You're not following the program and now you're mad at the program for not working when you're not even fucking doing it.
Here's what I have to say, because people think like, even with me and like my diet and stuff, that I'm like super strict and perfect. I'm not. I'm only perfect like 75% of the time, but I'm really consistent.
Do you know what they say?
Super consistent.
That you should aim for 80%. Well, aim for 100, but if you hit 80%, you fucking nailed it.
I think that's how I am, and I think that most people get so sad about the 20% that it spirals, and then they end up like sucking 80% instead of like, I'm like, dude, like if you had a donut or you didn't do your power practice or whatever you did, like that's fine. There's a new hour, there's a new day, there's a new week. Just be as consistent as possible, and in time, consistency equals massive growth.
It's you had a bad moment. You did not have a bad day. I hate when people are like, today's been the worst. I'm like, why? They're like, I stubbed my toe. I'm like, okay, that took 5 minutes out of your day.
Right.
What the fuck happened the other 23 hours and 55 minutes?
But people sometimes like to live in those stories because then it doesn't require them to change or do the work. But I will tell you right now, I think that we have this fear of, if I try to step outside my comfort zone, it's going to be more work than what I'm currently putting in. It's not. I will tell you right now.
I think it's more work to stay in your comfort zone.
It really is.
Because you have to not physically, but you have to, I think, like adamantly turn away new opportunities and new opportunities for growth and learning, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, like whatever it is. You have to be like, no, don't want that. And then you're almost like steering constantly away. It's like trying to go upriver.
Right.
Like you can't do that. You kind of have to go with the flow, and that's growing.
Right. I think it's weird too. Like I think a lot of times too, be careful with who you take advice from. So I will just say, like, be careful with who you take advice from, because I think that sometimes when we're on a path of trying to improve our lives and wherever we feel called to go in the direction that we feel like we need to go, you're always going to have people on the sidelines that are going to fall off. You're always going to have voices that are saying, what is she doing? Why is she doing that? What is going on? But you have to look at the results in your life that matter. And if you're doing something that's giving you the results, that means your family's going to see the results. And that means this is a ongoing trickle effect that who knows how many generations that this can pass by. So if you have a friend or a family member that says, you know, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You have they given you the results in your business? Have they? And if they haven't, be very careful with who you choose to take advice from. And I always think it's important to be somewhat self-interested, because in being somewhat self-interested, like literally, like if I wasn't somewhat self-interested in providing for myself and my kids, I would have a totally radically different lifestyle. And the whole education, none of this would exist.
No, literally none. And the thousands of people that have been trained, even since I've been here, like my life would be totally different. I wouldn't be here either. So you always do have to be a little bit self-interested. And I always say, yeah, and I agree with you, take advice from people who've either done it already or people who are aiming to do something similar or willing to grow. But it, like, for example, because we deal with hairstylists, if you know Sally Sue's been doing hair for 30, 40 years and she hasn't changed anything in her business in the past 20, yeah, she's going to dog you. Of course she's going to tell you what you're doing is stupid.
And if she's like, oh, why are you doing that? Why would you want to do that? Like you got to look at where she's at. Do you want to be her? Nope. And even if you feel like somebody's maybe at your same level, like maybe they have a full book of clientele, like whatever, and maybe they've been doing hair for longer than you. But do you want to stay at that level, or do you want to improve as an individual and an artist? So just be very careful with not only who you surround. I know that saying of like careful with who you surround yourself, or like whatever. Like, but I just think it's like getting the noise out of your head. Like focus on you and what's going to give you, your families, like the best results, because that's what's going to change things.
You are who you hang out with.
You are who you hang out with. You know what? I mostly hang out with my kids and my husband. Sometimes you, sometimes Katie.
I hang out with you.
I'm like, so I'm very choosy who's in my bubble.
I hang out with work people. Like, like I don't have friends outside of it.
I do have friends, but it's different because sometimes I'm like, I'm like, I don't even want to hold a serious conversation right now. I just want to have a cocktail and talk about nothing. And that is okay too. I used to like be like, oh, I don't need friends. And then I was like, no, it's okay to have friends that you just shoot the shit with. Yeah.
Yes. And do you know what I think is so cool about that? Even like Amanda at DKW, we're super, super, super close friends. But most of the time when we talk, it has literally nothing to do work. We're sending memes or making jokes or talking about weird shit we've seen or funny stuff that happened. Like most of our conversations have nothing to do with work. But when we do, it's like a very dialed in, like, hold on, let's focus on this dude. How about this? You do this. And it's just very, they say if you are around too many people and the people you talk to, you're only ever talking about like, well, what's next? What about this? And there's never like any other opinion or insight or topic of conversation. It's only like business all the time. They actually start calling that a closed feedback loop, where you're just hearing kind of the same feedback all the time. And most likely you're not really doing something with it, or you think that you are, but you're really not, because you guys are
in a closed loop.
Fuck no. And I don't feel we are, because we're always asking, we're always talking, we're always taking feedback from students, which our students are in the hundreds now. Right. Like, so it's not just me and you sitting in your room going, do you like it? I like it. Do you like that? Cool.
Well, that's why I'm like, poll the audience. Like whenever we're like, what do you think is
poll people?
I'm like, why do you think the Academy's not doing this? Why do you think? I'm like, why don't we send them a survey?
She goes, poll them. I go, who? She's like, the people. I'm like, oh my God.
Poll the people. You know, because I think it's like, if we're trying to create something, it's like why when you get surveys, it's like, hey, rate your experience. You know what I mean?
What's a good example of this though? For example, Amanda Ziola, she's our artistic director. She'll be doing 2 huge, massive color days for our coming up Academy convention. She's like, well, what do you think I should do? I go, ask them. Ask them where they're struggling with clients. Ask them where they're struggling with extensions. And then based off of the biggest things you hear, you can create new patterns, new placements. And she did. And it was like, ding, 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 ding. It was comment after comment after comment. And she looked and she goes, I'm seeing a pattern now. I go, that's what they need help with. Yeah. But if we were like, we think this is cool, we're going to do it because we like it. It's not about us. It's about the students.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, well, we're coming to the end of our podcast.
It's a good podcast.
We're back.
I was actually going to say, when me and Katie went to the zoo, I was like really proud that we didn't talk about work.
Not once.
What did we talk about? Just life and birds and hippos. Shenanigans.
I'm like, what did we do? We were really just shooting the shit the whole day.
Yeah, like I Saturdays and Sundays I try not to ask you guys about work, and I think you guys, everyone's like respectful in that same, we're like, please don't talk to me about work unless it's like a must do right now kind of thing.
Literally. And I know, because I have like an accountability group, I don't even respond on Saturday, Sunday.
Oh,
like,
that's good.
I'm like, no, I'm out. Like I need space from
Sometimes I will message people, but I've told multiple team members, I'm like, hey, if I'm like, unless it's an emergency, I'll tell you, hey, I need a response right now.
Yep.
But most of the time, if like I message you or Voxer you or whatever, I'm like, you can respond Monday. But because it's on my brain, I'm like, I want to hurry and respond.
And I always know that's what happens.
I just need to hurry and ask this.
Well, and Katie, that's what I'll do with her. I'll text her and I'll be like, 911, check Voxer right now. Like, it's important. Otherwise, I'm like, I'll see you Monday.
Yeah. But anyways, okay, you guys.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We have a new podcast every Tuesday. It comes out. We try to keep it around 30 minutes. Listen to it while you drive. Download the podcast app. And it's called the Big Money Stylist Podcast. Obviously, if you're here, you know right where to find it. But you can also see us live at dkwstyling.com. If you guys want more information on our education, we switched all of our big events to a virtual event this year. Tickets are going quickly. They'll only be on sale for another like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
So make sure, this is the one thing that I wanted to stress. I feel like artists, because things have been shut down and whatnot, especially in California, and just things are just different, right? In the beauty industry. And I feel like people are just literally like waiting for 2020 to be done. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, all this time that you have right now, you can still be productive with your time.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I'm like, if you feel like you want to go in and crush 2021 and you've been on the fence wanting to learn natural beauty rose, now is a good opportunity because maybe you have more time. Also, the price has been significantly dropped just so that we could give more people the opportunity. So again, if you guys have been on the fence, we did change our events to virtual, which means you can join anywhere in the world. I was going to say country, but even in the world.
Literally. I think we have some people from South Africa.
Yeah, we've had a few kind of all over. So anyways, make sure you check that out at bigmoneystylist.com. And again, tune in every week for a new podcast.